Hey everybody, Kirsten here, and today I'm going to be doing something a little different than usual. I've been marathoning Sarah Dessen books for the past week, so I don't have a book talk for you guys, and I probably won't until I finish City of Heavenly Fire next week. But what I do have today is something a little bit more fun. I'm going to be showing you guys my top 10 books that made me cry. So I know it seems like a little silly, but I love these books. They're tearjerkers, and I get really emotionally invested in books, so it's not uncommon for you to see me crying, laughing, or saying sarcastic comments to the characters in the books while I'm reading. I've seen a lot of booktubers do this, so I thought I'd give my top 10 books that made me cry. Number 10 is going to be Allegiant by Veronica Roth. I waited to read all of the Divergent books until Allegiant came out, so I think the reason why it made me cry was because I read all 3 books in a row. It was all fresh, and I was in love with the characters, and I just died a little on the inside with the amount of deaths in this book, which most dystopian have an insane body count by the end of the last book. It made me realize that Veronica Roth is not afraid to kill off a main character. Now, number 9 is also the 3rd book in a trilogy, and that would be Mockingjay by Suzanne. I read this book a long time ago when it first came out, so I haven't read it again. I have not been able to read Mockingjay for a second, third, or fourth time like I have the rest of the other books. It was no less shocking, so devastating. So much happens in the 3rd book. I've heard a lot of people talk about how they couldn't read the 3rd book because Katniss was so sad, and same with Allegiant because of what happens with Triss. But you gotta realize these girls go through so much crap in the first 2 books. You gotta imagine that at some point they're no longer gonna be that super strong girl. A lot of the deaths in this book also shocked me, as well as the character development, and it made me cry like pretty bad. Number 8 is Shadow Kiss by Richelle Mead. I know it seems weird that there's gonna be a Vampire Academy book in here, but I bawled my eyes out at the end of this book because what, Dimitri? What? So sad. Ugh. If there was ever one couple out of all of the books I've ever read that I loved and absolutely loved and just rooted for the entire time, it'd be Rose and Dimitri, and Shadow Kiss just ripped my heart out. So the next book that I have for you, I actually don't have a physical copy of, but number 7 is going to be The Book Thief. You know, it's been a long time since I read it. I remember reading it and just losing it. It was so sad. It really was. The end. If you haven't read The Book Thief, read it. If you haven't seen the movie, watch it. It just broke my heart, made me so sad. Number 6 is The Fiery Heart by Richelle Mead. So this is part of the Bloodline series. This is book 4. It's the most recent book that is out, and I don't know what it is about Richelle Mead and her books, but she just like drags you into these characters, makes you love them, and then unleashes hell on them. So, man, the end, the center will hold. It just made me lose it. I loved it. Now we get into my top 5, and these books made me sob uncontrollably, and as we go through the list, each one made me cry just a little bit more, so you can imagine what kind of a mess I was. Number 5 is going to be Harry Potter and the Order of the Pheonix. I will never love a character as much as I love Sirius Black. And if you haven't read the Harry Potter books or haven't read or watched the movies, I'm sorry, you've been living under a rock, but I'm about to have a spoiler. But I died a little inside when Sirius Black died at the end. It was so sad, and Harry was so devastated. Sirius Black dying was more emotional to me than Dumbledore, which you would think wouldn't be. It would be the opposite, but nope. Sirius Black, my baby. I cried for the whole last bit of this book, uncontrollably sobbing. It was sad. Number 4 is The Darkest Minds by Alexandra Bracken. I didn't think that these books were going to make me cry. It was actually a toss-up between this and Never Fade. I cried pretty bad for both of them, but I only wanted to put one of the books in the top 5. The end of this book, I was crying like a baby. I really was. It was so sad. Her saying goodbye to Liam, all of it. Chubbs, I was a mess. Zoo, I was a mess. I was crying. I was sobbing. It's so good. And this is one of my favorite series, for sure. Darkest Mind Never Fade. I cannot wait for In the Afterlight. It is going to be... it's one of those books that I just like can't wait for. Like every single day I'm like, oh my god, I wish I had it. This series is amazing. If you have not read this series, read it. It's like one of my favorites and I just absolutely love it. And this book broke my heart. Number 3 is going to be no surprise to anybody who's read it. And that is The Fault in Our Stars by John Green. I am not a big John Green fan. I'm just not, but this book is so good and it will make you sob. It will make you sob and you will cry, and you'll cry like you've never cried before reading a book. And I had a hard time finishing it. For the last 30 pages, I was like silently crying. That's the worst kind. When you're silently sobbing the whole time. This book did that. I was crying, but I had to finish it. And I didn't want to because it was so sad. And I just want to hug everybody. And I just, oh man. The romance in this happens in such a short amount of time. The amount that Gus and Hazel know each other is such a short amount of time to invoke such an emotional response, but you do. I couldn't put this book down. So sad, so sad. Number 2 is Clockwork Princess by Cassandra Clare. If you have read Clockwork Princess, you will also probably agree that it ruined your life. I was a mess. You get, oh man, I don't know what it is about the Infernal Devices, but this series is miles above the Mortal Instruments series. And I know it's like almost sacrilege for me to say that because Mortal Instruments is such a good series, but the Infernal Devices is so much better. It is so much better. It's like 2 levels above those books. I think she did the right thing by only having 3 books because I couldn't imagine stretching this out over 6. Jem, Will, and Tessa. It's the one love triangle I never minded because you love Jem and you love Will and you love Tessa, and you want them all just to be happy and just get along and for everything to work out. And I was devastated because Tessa is immortal. She can't die, and so she sees everyone she loves just died. She outlives her children. It is so sad and so heartbreaking, but so good at the same time. It's one of my favorite books, and it always will be. I absolutely love this book, and I have to give Cassandra Clare a round of applause because I wasn't expecting it to be as good as it was. And I was a sobby mess. I couldn't read anything for weeks after I finished this book. And the next and last book, number 1 on my tearjerker list, is going to be no surprise to anybody that knows me, and that is going to be Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. Every single time I read this book, I cry. I cry every single time someone dies. I remember the first time reading this book, I cried when Hedwig died, immediately. Like in the first couple chapters, I was a sobbing mess. I was a sobbing mess throughout this entire book. And the only way I can really explain how this book made me feel is I felt like my friends were dying because I have been reading these books for so long. When this book came out, I had been reading the books for about 10 years. I had fallen in love with them, followed their stories. I had waited years for each book to come out. It was the final book and I was in mourning before I even read it. And so reading it just... I lost it. The part when he gets the memories from Snape, I was a mess. When he goes out to the forest, I was inconsolably crying. I had to put the book down. I was in tears. I was sobbing. I was sobbing so bad that my boyfriend at the time just didn't know what to do with me. He thought it was the weirdest thing that I was crying so hard over characters. I couldn't even finish. Once it got to the chapter of King's Cross, I couldn't read anymore. I just couldn't. I had to put it down, take a break, and then I finished it. But I was crying the whole time during this book. This book ruined my life. I have an honorable mention. I wanted to put this in. I couldn't find a place for it. Hopeless by Colleen Hoover. This book also made me cry, but not as much as the others. So this is my honorable mention. There's just so much that happens. You feel so bad for her, the main character, throughout the entire thing, because there's just so much that happens. And it's a trigger heavy book, but it's just so heartbreaking but happy at the same time. So those are my top 10 tearjerker books. And if you have any books that made you cry, leave a comment down below. Let me know what it is. And if you felt the same way about any of these books, let me know. I'll put the link to my Tumblr and my Goodreads down below. And everybody have a great weekend, and I will see you next time.